I'm delighted to welcome back this afternoon Dame Sue Ion, who many of you will know. Sue was awarded an honorary degree here a number of years ago. It is almost impossible to condense Dame Sue's career into a 2-minute introduction, but I'm going to try. Dame Sue is an internationally recognised expert in nuclear energy and one of the UK's foremost nuclear engineers. She boasts local roots, as many of you will know. She went to school in Penwortham, currently living in Leyland, studied at the Imperial College in London, and after graduating with a first-class degree in material science, Dame gained her PhD before becoming technical officer at British Nuclear Fuels, where she was one of only 2 women working in the chemical engineering department at that time. And what an incredible career followed. As a director of that institute, Sue led a team of over 1,000 scientists and engineers delivering innovative solutions and annual investments worth over £100 million. Her influence in the sector in which she has worked cannot be underestimated. She was responsible for convincing British Nuclear Fuel to make £1 million investment in research and development facilities at the Sellafield site. And her reach is also extended nationally. Dame Sue was a member of the Council for Science and Technology and was credited with persuading the Blair government to change government policy on nuclear power. And she was and remains passionate about scientific evidence bases informing policy decisions, and she was also an advisor to Gordon Brown on long-term energy policy. Her expertise is in energy strategy and her success in promoting the benefits of the industry, and her ability to persuade governments to realise that there is a need for nuclear fuel alongside renewables to meet Britain's long-term energy needs, and this has won her very widespread recognition. As a Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering, Dame Sue served as Vice President and was the first woman to be awarded the Academy's most prestigious honour, the President's Medal. And in 2022, her services to science and engineering were rightfully recognised when she was made a Dame. Always keen to give back, Dame Sue is a huge advocate of working with schools and young people, and she's keen to instil a passion for learning in others. She has spent countless hours in schools and colleges promoting programmes to support young people to develop the skills to meet industry demand and make science teaching more relevant to everyday life. As many of you will know, the university has a rich history of empowering and celebrating women. This is a value that we share with our Honorary Doctor, who's also a huge advocate of encouraging women to pursue careers in science and engineering. And as she once said, I just want to get across that it is possible to have a really exciting career, and say to young girls, for goodness sake, don't drop science. Ardent role models like Sue are absolutely vital. According to Engineering UK's 2022 Women in Engineering report, females comprise only 16.5% of the engineering workforce. This is up from 6% in 2020, so there is progress, but I think we can see how much more there is still to do. Dame Sue is at the forefront of the campaign to champion STEM careers and boost female representation in the sector. And what an impact she is having. We are incredibly lucky that Sue is an honorary doctor of the institution, and it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to Sue and hear about the work that she's doing to undoubtedly inspire the next generation of engineers. Sue, welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed for that intro. I wish I'd seen it beforehand. I'd have cut it down to a couple of lines, I think. And also, you've just given half my talk. So many thanks for the warm welcome that I've had here, as I've had on my other occasions coming to Edge Hill. You are really lucky to come to such an amazing institution, and I envy some of the facilities that you have now, much better than the ones that I had all those years ago when I did my degree. So, well done to you for choosing Edge Hill as your place. So today I've got 3 things that I'm going to talk about really. Why science and engineering scientists and engineers matter, my career, which Sarah asked me to sort of talk through, and then choices and exploring options. Because what I would like to get over to you is, whether you're a member of staff or a student here at this university, you can do your bit in trying to help students, particularly students aged between 12 and 16, to understand more about the choices that they could have. Because I'm not really convinced that in school they actually get visibility of the choices in science and particularly engineering of the sort of jobs that you can actually have. Okay, so following what you love, engineering and science-based careers. There are many more women in those areas now than there were when I graduated. And the important thing is to instill that love in science and particularly engineering in kids between the ages of 12 and 16. Because you're here now doing engineering either as a staff member or a student, and you clearly love engineering, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So trying to get over that love and passion for engineering is really important, because kids catch on. They think, oh, well, if they think it's that good, I might have a look at it. I usually show that in schools because it has a real impact, because it shows just in a couple of minutes a variety of stuff that you can do that's relevant to the modern age, and it quite often creates a buzz in the room. So it's readily available. The Royal Academy of Engineering have it that you can download and use, as they have quite a lot of stuff in their This is Engineering bucket, which I'll show later. So yes, I went to Penwitham Girls Grammar School, now Penwitham Girls High School. Sadly, it now no longer has a sixth form, it just does 11 to 16, but hopefully still encourages girls to go and do science at the next stage in college. I went to university in London and did material science and engineering at Imperial College, where I had a great time, and I did my PhD there as well. Now, when I was at school, if you were any good at science subjects, you could get a prize, and in those days the prize was a book. You had to pick a book. So I picked a book when I was 16 called Atomic Energy, that I still have, actually. I should have brought it today. It was relatively a small summary of atomic energy at the time, and if you read it now, not a lot's changed, actually. But I chose to work in the nuclear industry. I did a module on nuclear stuff at university, and I was convinced that it was where the future would be. I started off as a young technical support officer for our plants at Springfields, and I ended up as the Chief Technology Officer for what was British Nuclear Fuels, but we also bought Westinghouse during my time there, and I looked after all of Westinghouse's technology as well. So I went to Imperial, central London. Probably couldn't afford to live there now on the sort of grant. Didn't have to pay either, because in those days education at university was free, and you got a grant to help you live as well. So it was a very different era, and I really do feel sorry for the students of today who have to take out a loan to get taught and also a loan to live on a daily basis. So I was lucky. I had summer placements, and as I drove over from Leyland today to the university and I actually drove through Latham, and I fondly remembered my time at what was Pilkington Glass's research station at Latham. I had a fantastic summer working in those labs, looking at liquid crystals. What part of my job was to smash 100 Jaguar Land Rover windscreens, because they were testing, new shatterproof windscreens at the time that are commonplace today. But it was great fun, and I learned what it was like to be a practical as well as a theoretical scientist. I got a summer placement as a student and went to the University of Toronto for 3 months. They swapped some Canadian students with British students, and again I had a great time at that time looking at weld embrittlement in ferritic stainless steel. So got again some practical experience about what research was like in a top university, but in Canada rather than the UK. So the advice that I would give you if you're students is, you know, maximise the opportunities you have, you know, pester your lecturers for summer placements somewhere, because, you know, companies are still happy to take talented science and engineering students to give them a taste of what it might be like working in industry. So I went to work at Springfields after I graduated and got my PhD. This is the nuclear fuel manufacturing plant just west of Preston on the way to Blackpool. You pass it on the train as you just go through Savik. And I spent many a happy time there. Originally, only 2 of us on the plant support for the fuel factory. It's now run by Westinghouse on a lease on behalf of the government. So it still makes all the fuel for the reactors here in the UK and makes some products to send overseas for reactors overseas. This is me a long time ago, looking down a microscope at a nuclear fuel pellet, because until they've actually been in the reactor, they're not that radioactive at all. It's just like heavy metal like lead or other heavy metals, and when you're looking at them, they're usually encased in plastic and then polished so that you can have a look at the structure and make sure it's all still good. So I learned a lot about the sector. As I got promoted, I also got the chance to work in the technical sales area because at that time we did a lot more in the way of overseas work for the global nuclear industry. And when you were working in the marketing and sales area, you had to be technically qualified because the customers expected to be able to talk to you on about the stuff they were buying from you. So I went to Japan lots of times, on average once or twice a year for the best part of 10, 15 years. And that was amazing. So negotiated some agreements for research collaboration with the Japanese, who are all terribly formal. But also got the chance to have a look at Japanese history and culture. So went to dinners where geisha women were the principal servers and drank and took part in green tea ceremonies. When you drink ceremonial green tea, it's not actually like the green tea you drink from Tesco's in a bag. It's actually a bit more like pea soup, and it's not very good. Although you know you can't say that, you just got to do it. But I always remember going on a walk. In fact, the walk where I went to have a look at the sake jars that are on the. Has it got a picture? No, it hasn't got a pointer. But these are sake jars that the Japanese store sake in. But it was quite a hot day, ice cream outside, and I thought, I'll have a mint ice cream, green ice cream. So I got my mint ice cream, and it turned out to be green tea. Went to Russia. Wouldn't be allowed to do that now because of interesting geopolitics. But at the time the Berlin Wall fell in 1995, I think it was, there'd always been collaboration between Russia and the Western world on science matters, so I got to go to Russia. And again, agreements to collaborate. We had some quite strong collaborations with the Russian scientists in both Moscow and St. Petersburg. And I got to take part in quite a lot of technical dialogues with them. This professor here was our translator, and he's Professor Pollock from Manchester, Russian fluent speaker, and he translated for Margaret Thatcher and Mikhail Gorbachev. So we got a lot of really interesting stories from him about those interactions and also the work that he'd done. On the journey from Moscow to St. Petersburg, we actually travelled overnight on a Russian train. And walk at the station that you go from in Moscow, it was like walking onto the set of Dr. Zhivago. And the train was like an old-fashioned British Railways train. You guys are probably all too young to remember those. But on each corridor they had a samovar, which is a big thing that dispenses tea. And the guard came along selling Georgian champagne if you wanted to have one of those. So very memorable. went to North America lots of times because we had a very important collaboration link with the United States and with Canada. And I still chair the Science Advisory Board for the Canadian government for their national nuclear lab. Went to South Africa in the days that Nelson Mandela and then Thabo Mbeki were the presidents. And we had quite a vibrant program there until the financial crisis hit and they wound back their nuclear program at that time. They've got operating nuclear reactor there, but they're about to invest in new ones to help their situation for electricity. And I also got to go to Hawaii. Now, those of you who know the nuclear industry probably think, what's she got Hawaii on the map for? Because there certainly aren't any nuclear power stations on Hawaii, not at the moment anyway. But it's because when you get to a senior position in a company in Britain, the government likes senior industrialists to help make decisions about where the big investments in university research are spent. So that our research councils have what they call advisory councils, which have industrialists on them to help make decisions about where should the money be invested in next generation technologies. And at the time, there was the Particle Physics and Astronomy Research Council, the Engineering Physical Sciences Research Council, the National Environment Research Council, and the Arts and Humanities Research Council. Now, some of them have changed, merged, and whatnot over the years, but I served on both the Particle Physics and the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Councils over a period of about a decade. And these were taken because you got the opportunity to go to open the telescopes on the Mauna Kea volcano in Hawaii. So somebody else took a picture of me by the observatory notice there, but I took the photographs on the summit of the Mauna Kea volcano of the Japanese Subaru telescopes and our telescopes, and I was able to observe with British top astronomers for a night at the top of the volcano. So that was just, you think, what experiences can you have? So I would say to you, you've no idea, usually, what you're going to do when you finish university. You might think you have, but you never know what opportunities are going to come to you, because I'd never have dreamt that I'd have been able to do that sort of thing. And my job was great, by the way, but some of the stuff that I got to do as well was fantastic. So I still do. I'm still president of the National Skills Academy for Nuclear, where we're trying to encourage more engineers into the sector, but also just into engineering generally. Until Brexit, I chaired the European Commission's Euratom Science and Technology Committee. That's the committee that says where European money goes to nuclear research. I chaired for the government the Nuclear Innovation Research Advisory Board for 3 years when it was first set up in about 2015. I actually advised the American government. I sat on their Nuclear Energy Advisory Committee as the only non-US person for the best part of 10 years until 2018. And I represented the UK at the International Atomic Energy Agency for the same period. I'm a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Royal Society. One's engineering, the other science, are two national academies. I'd never have dreamt when I was doing my degree at university that I would have ever got elected to those two national academies. So Royal Academy of Engineering, I'm in the black and white dress on the back row there, the year I got elected, and then I got elected to the Royal Society, and you have to sign a book, and it's the same book that Charles Darwin signed. So they don't, and it's a fountain pen, and it's not paper, it's vellum, and they don't want you to mess it up. So you get a piece of vellum to practice on before you put it on the actual book. Brian Cox was elected the same year as me, so he and I had a good chat. He's a great guy, by the way. But probably one of the coolest things I've done is have lunch at the palace with their late Majesty and Prince Philip. It's probably a bit hard to see, but you can see, sorry if I'm on this side rather than that, the Queen there, Duke of Edinburgh there, and that's me. So there were only 6 other people there. The others are staff that belong to the palace. Because I got the phone call saying, well, are you available? Because it comes through, this is Buckingham Palace, and you think, well, if I wasn't, I will be now. And originally I thought it was just going to be one of these big things that they have where lots of people get invited. And then when the letter came through and I realised there was only a small number of people, I thought, wow. So I kept the invitation card and the menu, and that was a really cool event. But I got in 2010, I got awarded a damehood by Her Majesty the Queen. That's me picking up the damehood. And that, I thought that was, I mean, that pinnacle, absolute amazing pinnacle of my career. But then, just before the Jubilee, 2 years ago now, I was awarded a Dame Grand Cross, which is, there aren't many issued. I was only the sixth woman to have got one since 1960. More men get them, but I was only the sixth woman to have got one. And all the others were lawyers, top lawyers, like Baroness Hale and people like that. And I received that. The Queen died in the September, sadly, and so I received the actual honour from Prince William in the November of the year the Queen died. So it was nice having a chat with him, he's lovely. But then I got invited to the coronation. As a result, they invite somebody who's got either a dame or a knight Grand Cross, and I was the person that they wrote to and said, will you be in the parade at the coronation? As a result, I met Sebastian Coe, who's an absolutely marvellous chap as well. And we all mustered in a tent in the cloisters of the Abbey. We'd go to rehearsal on the Thursday and practice. We'd practice walking at exactly the right speed so that the King would arrive where he needed to be at exactly 11 o'clock. So that's me and that's Seb Coe. So when Hugh Edwards was announcing who's in the parade, he mentioned Seb Coe, obviously because he's famous. So the King's behind us. The pursuivants are in the full coats of arms things. They were behind us, and then a load more people, and then the King. So we were in front of the King on the way to where he sat. So that was absolutely fantastic. So I didn't get to see much of the coronation because you parade round and you end up against one of the back walls. So my husband he wasn't invited. It was so I got to watch it on the telly when I came home. So advising politicians, in the intro, people talked about the politicians. When I was on the Council for Technology, it's the Prime Minister's Council, so whoever's Prime Minister of the day, it's their council. I actually got to sit in front of Tony Blair and talk about energy policy and eat bacon sandwiches. We all had a bacon sandwich because it was a breakfast meeting. Met the others, Ed Miliband, Naeem Zadawi, Gordon Brown, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Andrea Leadsom, Greg Clark, etc. And a few others as well. I just didn't stick them on the slide. But probably one of the most interesting meetings just before COVID was back in number 10 with Dominic Cummings and other people talking about nuclear energy policy. And why the government was being so slow to do something about that. So I got to go into number 10 again and meet with Dominic Cummings and his team. So I do two things now. I talk about energy and I also talk to schools about the exciting bit of science. So I'm just going to do a little bit of energy stuff for you because I think that's really important, and I know the university here is passionate about net zero targets and a lot of the journey there. And I'm still in the bucket that says it's hugely challenging, if not impossible. So when you look, most people talk about electricity, and it sits in the, I'll go this way for a change, it sits in the energy supply bucket. But it's only 25% of the total. And the real biggies are transport and what we do about that, and the fact that most of us heat our homes still with gas, because that was strategy back in the 1990s. So, and if you decarbonise both of those by electrifying the transport sector and electrifying homes with heat pumps, then you're going to double the requirements here for electricity on the grid. And I know, don't know whether, yes, they're in the room. Our two lecturers in the electrical engineering department do a lot of work on grid management and things like that. So I know this is an old slide, but it makes the point. there's an app you can download. It's called Electricity Map. Just all one word, Electricity Map. And it's an open source thing that Europe produces, and it chucks up a map like that, and it shows you what the hour by hour electricity of the country is. So, you know, if you're green, which France normally is because it's got 70+% nuclear on its grid, or Sweden, which is 50-50 nuclear and renewables, or Norway, nearly all hydro, it gives you a feel for how good you are. And we're normally brownish. And Germany, who you'd think would be a lot cleaner, isn't. It's normally a darker brown than we are, because they're burning a lot of coal, because they used to burn gas, but they're burning a lot of coal, and they're winding down their nuclear industry. So the reason why it's so difficult to get to net zero is because gas is our go-to at the moment. Our nuclear is declining, which I'll come on to in a minute. Biomass isn't 100% clean. It's actually quite a bit dirtier than nuclear or wind. The variability of wind and solar are the key issues for us. If the wind's blowing and the sun's shining, the grid takes it. But if it's not, then something else has to fill the gap. And you can see how there's a massive variation between nighttime and middle of the day. And there's a huge uptick just after 6 o'clock in the morning as everybody gets up, sticks the kettles on and gets ready to go to work, and then work starts. So gas is our go-to. And we get our gas now from imports mainly. More than 50% of what we burn as gas comes from overseas. It either comes from pipeline from Europe, or it comes in LNG imports, mainly from the Middle East, because North Sea reserves are declining. So this is where we get the LNG from, not from Russia anymore. Oops, let's go back one. Mainly from the Middle East. And we don't store it at all very well. Our storage capacity for gas is tiny compared with everybody else. I mean, Italy's got a much smaller population than we have, and they store loads more gas than we do to make sure their grid's always okay. So infrastructure in gas storage is important as we transition through to not using gas. So really, the low carbon sources for us are nuclear, biomass, hydro, marine, solar, and wind turbines. They're the best in terms of lower carbon sources. And if you look at where the carbon is, nuclear and wind are about comparable because the carbon footprint is mainly due to the concrete that supports the turbines or underpins the nuclear power plant. Hydro is about twice as bad, solar 4 times as bad, but biomass is quite significantly worse than nuclear or wind unless you put carbon capture with it, which we don't at the moment. And then gas and coal are the bad guys. So this is what is low carbon, and what not everybody realises that nuclear and wind are about the same. But we're losing them. We've got extensions at Heysham for a couple of years and at Hartlepool for a couple of years. But they'll all be off the grid by 2030. And the only one that we'll have left running is Sizewell B in Sussex. We were going to build some more at Hinkley Point and Sizewell, which we are doing. But one in Wales and the one in Cumbria we didn't go ahead with, and the companies withdrew. So in terms of what next, Rolls-Royce has been doing a lot of work on low carbon power as well as nuclear, but they're the only British design of a next generation reactor, because quite a lot of interest globally at the moment is not in the big ones, it's in smaller ones that are faster to build, and you can build in factories and then ship and assemble on site. So I do quite a lot of work talking about energy and energy supply, and as a result, again, you never know what you'll get involved with when you're at school or you're at university. I've done quite a lot of radio work, been on Desert Island Disc, you can still listen to that if you want, or the Life Scientific. Been on Woman's Hour more than once, and I went and took part in the Infinite Monkey Cage with Brian Cox and Robin Inch, which was a great fun night with the statistician David Spielgeiter and one of the guys from it was Graham, the goodies, one of the goodies. Graham gone, that's it. And I've also been on the news on the TV. And that's a lot scarier. If you're ever asked to go on TV, make sure you get a bit of training before you agree to do it, because it's a lot scarier. I don't know which is worse, actually, live or recorded. I think live, probably. Scarier, but recorded is as bad. And it's mainly been on nuclear stuff. I did, Jeremy Paxman was on Newsnight, so it's a while ago now. I was at Salford Quays, because they ring you up with no notice whatsoever and say, can you be on telly tonight? And you say, well, I live in the northwest, so no, I can't get to London. So they say, well, can you go to Salford Quays? Well, yeah. So you roll up at Salford Quays at 10:30 at night, ready to go on Newsnight, and you go into security and they say, yeah, sit there, technician will be over in a minute, and time's ticking on and you're getting panicked. And this guy jogs over in his pyjamas from I don't know where, takes you upstairs to the breakfast TV studio, plonks you in front of a camera that's that big, puts an earpiece in your ear, and you can't see anything, but the camera's looking at you. And there's a plastic coffee cup on the top, and you're thinking, what's that there for? And he says, don't look at the screen. Look at the plastic coffee cup, otherwise you'll look shifty. And so that's what you did. So I could hear Jeremy Paxman, but I couldn't see him, and the interview took place that way. And then last year, Sky News wanted to talk about nuclear energy because of the increasing cost of Hinkley Point, and so I was on Sky News. But the other ones were engineering skill shortage, which I've done a couple of times, again, sitting in the green room at the BBC. And I took part in one of the Discovery Channel's Disasters Engineered programmes. They actually came and recorded that in COVID. We did a whole programme on compare and contrast nuclear disasters with dams breaking, trains crashing and stuff like that. I think you can still get that as well on Disasters Engineered. Sky was probably the interesting one because I couldn't get to the Sky studios in London, so they said, we'll send the van. And so the van appeared, big van, and this satellite dish, massive satellite dish, like jacked out of the roof. And then they laid these massive cables across our front lawn and in through the front window to do the live thing from my lounge. And my other half was in our bedroom where we've got another telly, so he watched me on telly while I was being interviewed in the lounge. The neighbours all came out, what's all that, so yeah, it's, media's exciting. But other cool things that I've got to do, which you wouldn't guess, I went to JCB last year to look at their hydrogen engine, which is just truly awesome. Clean engine to move diggers, and I got to refuel their prototype digger out in the field. So that was all good fun as well. So, women engineers, going back to the school talk now that I give, there's plenty that are stellar. Judith Hackett, who was the chair of the Health and Safety Executive, Wendy Hall, who helped invent the, not the World Wide Web, the remote Internet of Things, that's it. Julia King, Baroness Brown, and Anne Dowling in the bottom left there, who did a lot of silent aircraft work. Molly Stevens on the right for bioengineering, and Alison Noble for work to create bubbles that you carry drugs to a tumour and then you burst with an ultrasound to help treat. So just amazing people. And so I talk about the breadth of things that you can do. It doesn't matter what engineering degree you've got actually in the end. Most companies will have you, So you can, even if you've got an aerospace degree, you can go and work in pretty much any engineering company because they're after your skills, your project management skills, your problem solving skills, and a lot of baseline teaching that's common to nearly every single engineering course. So, I try and get across to the kids in school that there's a lot more than just maths, physics, chemistry and biology. And choices, there's plenty, thousands depending on what you want to do. And plenty of companies that you could work for. These are just the big ones. There's loads of small companies as well. So it's just to give people an idea. So digital world of the future, what it was, what it could be. Now is probably wrong now as well. There are clam phones coming back, unbelievably. And medicine, veterinary science, which most kids know about. But aerospace, automotive, engineering and the biological and life sciences. Quite a lot of the advances in life sciences are made because of the engineering of both the molecules and the equipment by which you can make the intervention and diagnostics. Chem-eng, chemistry, a bit more traditional. Civ-eng, dentistry and oral science, which are very, very different now. I've just had a look around your medical school. Unbelievable in terms of the kit that now students have access to instead of what you would have 30 or 40 years ago. Electrical and electronic engineering, a lot in drone technology and in robots of all sorts. Environmental science, which is quite often attractive to girls, more so than boys. Geology, earth sciences, more traditional ones. Informatics, the digital world, so important to every aspect of it, of engineering. Materials, biomaterials, marine, all of it. Just to give them an idea of what they can do. So, going out to schools and showing this sort of thing, that there's masses that you could do and be excited about if you wanted to. Even physics, especially if you go to Manchester and get taught by Brian Cox. But it's very important that we show the breadth of what's available. So going back to This is Engineering, This is Engineering website, it's got all sorts of people on it. People that relate to the students of the day or to you, whether they're working for ASOS or TikTok or Facebook or many YouTube clips that you can lift that the Royal Academy of Engineering has given links to show people who you'd recognise as famous, and the fact that actually they're engineers, and the reason they got to do what they're now doing is because they were great scientists or engineers. And then I usually play that video that I did at the beginning, which I'll cut to at the end. So the last cool thing that I did was I chaired the Royal Academy of Engineering's Mac Roberts Award, and it's like the Oscars for engineering each year. It's a big prize and a medal. So I went to the aircraft manufacturers in Belfast to look at how they make wings for the Airbus, because it's a really interesting design of aircraft wing. To the Alstone Medical that have a breath test. Normally to detect cancer and things like that, they take blood samples off you, and some people just can't bear having blood taken, so they never go and get tested. This is, you breathe into it, and it picks up the signals that enable a doctor to know that you've got lung cancer or other forms of cancer. And the 2017 winner was Raspberry Pi, who you probably all played with Raspberry Pis. They're the tiny computer things that they use in schools to help kids learn to code. Previous winners, there was an artist who wanted to express the winners in art, so the art forms at the top and the actual things like the CT scanner and the wing are at the bottom and the art's on the top. But David Hockney, his Quantel paint box, using the Quantel paint box which won, to do most of his paintings now. The CT scanner, which either you or a relative has probably been in one of these. The Kinect, which is the mobility thing. It's used for things that Microsoft never ever imagined it being used for. Surgeons use it to help them work out how to do operations. And that was the Bombardier wing with their chief engineer, who's a lady, which is great. Raspberry Pi again. Blatchford with their legs that behave, artificial legs, which behave like real legs. And Arup, who designed the cube thing for the Olympics when they were held in Beijing. Touch Bionics with a artificial hand that works like a proper hand. And just some more about the different sorts of engineering, whether you're making software or fragrances for Lush, or you're in design in terms of virtual reality. And a bit of a story of each of these, but I'm conscious of time and you'll want to ask questions, so I won't go on with those. Same with the girls. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's robotics, construction, aerospace, energy, special effects, agri-tech. Basically, the world is your oyster if you're an engineer. You can do anything you like. And it's just important to get that across to people. because in the end, as well as science, engineering is at the heart of a sustainable and prosperous society. It's what puts the applications into real use, and it improves life across the globe, and it gives people amazing opportunities for careers and benefit. And you need the cutting edge science to give the base for those engineering solutions. So it doesn't matter whether it's in healthcare or in clean water, which Thames Water could probably do with a bit of now, or cybersecurity to protect you from phishing and other things that happen to us. It's all there, the basic science and the engineering. I won't show the video again for you because you saw it before. There's more information about my career if you want, or if you want, this is engineering, and look at the other things that you could maybe share with people. It just shows you those. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
Just a question actually on behalf of my thanks. On behalf of my husband, actually, he's a third-year mechanical engineering student, and he's really disappointed he can't be here today. And his final project is on molten salt reactors, the corrosion stainless steel. Yeah. So he asked me if he could ask you a question on your opinion of viability of molten salt reactors.
Yeah, that's a good question. They're probably further behind deployment than the traditional light water reactors are for the next generation. There's still quite a lot of development work to go for molten salt reactors. They're very attractive because they're not pressurized, and you can use the heat that's stored in the salt as well as the reactor electricity output. So for decarbonisation, where heat is as important as electricity, then molten salts have quite a few advantages. But corrosion, which is good job he's doing that, is one of the big things that has yet to be fully overcome. There's lots of validation and verification, or tests and experimentation required for molten salt reactors to demonstrate to the regulators internationally that all those problems are satisfactorily solved, and that they'll actually run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year without any problems. So yeah, there's a lot of potential and a lot of interest globally in molten salt reactors.
Great, thank you. Linda?
Thanks, Sue. That was absolutely fascinating. I hesitate to ask the question because I don't even know if I'll say the right words, because I'm absolutely not a scientist. But I'm interested in the issue of nuclear fuel, and even in that short presentation, it was very compelling in terms of why it should be a really viable option to a major energy crisis, and yet actually there is this resistance to it. And I just wondered what your take was on that, in terms of the politics, public opinion, and how we overcome some of those things.
I mean, public opinion isn't that negative, and it depends how you ask the question. For anybody living near an existing power station, they'll say to you, build a new one before this one retires, because we're quite happy with it, thank you very much. The safety standards that are applied now particularly are second to none, and so when people have question marks about the safety of the reactor, that is generally not an issue. Quite often people ask about, well, what about the waste? But it's not, the waste is not that large in volume either. If we replaced all our existing reactors, we'd add 10%, that's all, to the existing waste that we have to deal with from having run different types of reactors for the last 60 years. Most of it is stored at Sellafield. The countries that have already found what they call repositories to emplace the nuclear waste, like Sweden and Finland, the populace has been generally supportive of those projects. So it's really a question of how do you get to net zero without it, because we don't store energy. So better ways to store it would be helpful, but it's one of the only forms of large scale generation. You'd fit 3 nuclear reactor cores in this area. They're only 5 meters in diameter, and they give you, 1,600 megawatts of power. And to get that amount of power, you'd have to have 50, 60 square miles of wind farm offshore somewhere to do that. And it would still be intermittent. And they run for 60 to 80 years, the modern ones, without any trouble at all. So it's really a balance, do you want electricity secure and safe or, to live our modern lives, or are you going to face power cuts in the future when we can't get power off the grid? So I just think the important thing is to try and explain how low carbon it is, and also that the issues that were historic issues are solved with engineering.
What's the political take on it?
Yeah, well, politics, the main political parties are in favour. Even the Lib Dems sort of sway from neutral to, well, yeah, we probably need it. But it's all about money and where the investment comes from, because what the government's, any colour of government, doesn't want to do is pour loads of money into it. So they're relying on the market to actually invest. And there's always the market will go for numbers 3, 4 and 5. Nobody wants to be the ones to invest in 1 and 2 because they don't know whether the government policy will change, they don't know whether it'll cost more than they thought, etc., etc. And because of the ones that we picked to replace ours are the biggest and most difficult to construct, they're having a struggle to meet budget and meet timeline. Whereas the newer small modular reactors that everybody's interested in internationally, they'll be a lot faster to build, so the amount of money you have to borrow is smaller and the time over which you borrow it. Because most of what you pay, you and I pay on the power that comes from a nuclear reactor is the financing charge on borrowing the money to build it. Once built, the running costs are pretty low.
So, can I just...
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to... because I was interested when you said about South Africa adopting it because they've got obviously major issues with electricity supply. What sort of timescales would you be looking at then to have a nuclear fuel option?
For South Africa.
Or if we were to try and develop it further.
Oh well, if we're building one at Hinkley Point now, and they'll build another one at Sizewell in Suffolk, but they won't be on the grid before 2030. Hinkley Point might make it 28, 29, but not much before. But if you started building the small ones now, if you started today, and the financing was available and the site was specified, they'd also be on the grid by 2030. Yeah.
My daughter did a maths and biology degree, but when she came to look at jobs, all the science-based jobs, she was going to have to do a master's or a PhD, but she had an economic imperative to get a job and earn money. She didn't want that debt hanging around her neck. So what advice do you give to young people who you're encouraging to go into science and engineering? How do they get over that sort of monetary hurdle?
It's a good challenge. I would look to be. I would look a lot broader than the obvious places to apply with, in your case, a maths and biology degree, and see where there are opportunities to get a job straight away, not necessarily exactly building on your degree experience, and to look at some of the smaller companies as well as the bigger companies, or to look for areas where they'll actually sponsor you to do a master's degree while they employ you. So it's not easy at all, I agree. Yeah.
Very interesting talk and really inspiring for potential engineers. I'm somewhat biased as being an ex-engineer. I wanted to ask a question about an alternative form of energy. You, like I, probably remember the Tomorrow's World with Raymond Baxter going on and on about marine power, wave power. We're ideally sited as a country. I just wonder your view on why it hasn't happened.
It's mainly because of the lower carbon forms of energy. It is the most expensive. So wind is the cheapest in terms of things that you can emplace in the sea and get power from in large quantities. So there is quite a bit of research still ongoing on marine technology. There's quite a few projects up on the north coast of Scotland, between Orkney and the mainland. There was a lot of work done originally on wave power, but wave power is actually quite complex. Well, you probably know better than me. Quite a lot of the power is in the top part of the ocean, and so the ability to survive in very strong seas in storm conditions is actually quite difficult. And for the undersea turbines, there's quite a lot of challenge from environmentalists in terms of the ecosystem on the seabed and the disruption to the bottom of the sea. But also corrosion is a big issue for any of the turbines that you place under the sea. The sea is not a very friendly environment to the materials of construction, so quite a lot of work still to do to get them as efficient and effective as they can be. I mean, probably the more realistic proposals have been to try and put across Morecambe Bay, a road across Morecambe Bay, but with turbines embedded in the structure that you create the road from. So there's been on and off marine technologies that will be suitable, but they're just generally expensive. So cost and some of the materials of construction are still an issue. But it would be good, I agree with you, the time of the tide moves all around the UK. So, potentially it's great because, when there's no generation, when it's slack water at one, it's full force of tide change at the somewhere else. So it would be a good solution, yeah.
Hi, I'm interested in knowing what more we can do with particular industries to encourage more women into the profession, because their working conditions don't necessarily appeal to the female population. I use an example. So my husband actually works in renewable energies. He works on wind farms in Europe, and the working conditions are generally working away from home, 2 weeks offshore on a ship full of blokes, and those sort of conditions may not be appealing to women. So what more do you think could be done to change?
Well, it's true, some are more appealing than others. Until you get more women in, it's kind of chicken and egg. Until you get more women in, the change tends not to happen. But quite a lot of the offshore jobs are still very male-dominated. But you get the odd woman. Angela Strank was BP's chief engineer, and she used to spend 2 on, 2 off on the oil rigs out in the North Sea and elsewhere internationally. So women do it, but I agree it's not necessarily the thing that would appeal to everybody. But there are plenty of engineering jobs that do. And I think the important thing is to try and eat the elephant in bite-sized chunks. Display some of the careers that you can have that would be appealing, that people wouldn't think twice about. And once people get to university and get the full show of what might be available to them, then they start to take a bit more interest. And also giving them an experience with offshore or some of the more challenging environments. Some people take to it like a duck to water. Some people unexpectedly so. So it's a question of just trying to give people experiences that they might latch onto, I think. And change some of the obvious things. Like there's no excuse whatsoever for a land-based company to have anything other than top flight, change facilities, loos, canteen arrangements, things like that are 21st century, suitable for everybody. And companies that still live in Victoriana, who don't have ladies' loos on the factory floor, they're in the dark ages. Who'd want to work for them anyway?
Excellent. Any final questions? Okay, excellent. Just by way of wrapping up, Dame Sue, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I suppose 2 things really stood out to me in that talk. First of all, just the passion for the discipline that really shines through from you, and the kind of enthusiasm that you have. for science and engineering and women in the industry has been really inspiring. And the second thing that stands out to me is, I mean, what a career. What a career. It's been really awe-inspiring to hear about some of the things that you've done, and the sense from which all of that started from the Hamlin book of atomic energy, and that sense of the kind of butterfly effect of, you know, what are the things for us that are working with, you know, the next generation of scientists and engineers, what are the things that we're doing that are creating that excitement and giving people those opportunities. So thank you so much for all that you've done. When you arrived earlier, having listened to your list of honours, I feel a bit embarrassed that I shook your hand. I feel like I should have curtsied or something. So if I've broken protocol, then I apologise for that. But you know, Dame Sue and people like Dame Sue. You know, a couple of weeks ago we had Lady Hale here. I think we really have to celebrate as a university the fact that these are our honorary doctors and part of this university as well. So welcome back. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to keeping in touch with you over the weeks and years ahead. Right, thank you.